Welcome to the Collide Kids podcast, hosted by Christen Clark. This is a show for kids and families. You are going to meet new people and have fun while you listen. Let's do it!
Hey, y'all. Welcome to the Collide Kids podcast. I'm your host, Christen Clark. The Collide Kids podcast is a show for kids and families where we learn together how life and faith collide. I am so glad that you're listening today. Thank you so much for being here and spending this time with me. If this is your first time listening, I just want to say welcome. I'm really glad you're here too. Be sure to listen to the end of every episode. That's where we have the kids only segment where kids just like you get to be on the podcast. Well, I cannot believe that we are in the month of June. It has been such a long year and yet has gone by so fast. I think all parents say that kind of stuff. And I have some incredible guests for this month. And then I wanted to let you know that during the month of July and maybe a week or two in August, I take off and there are no podcast episodes. Well, there are no new podcast episodes because I'm taking what I call a Sabbath break. And what I mean by that is it's a time for me to set aside, to spend more time with my family, to rest, and just to get more excited about the upcoming season. So I hope that you will continue to listen. Go back and listen to some of the episodes maybe you haven't heard before. I'll be posting about that on my social media and giving you some recommendations. So if you are looking for some episodes during the month of July and August when you're like, man, I really miss the Collide Kids podcast, don't worry, I got you covered. I'm going to recommend some really good ones for you. But for this month of June, I've got some really cool stuff coming up and I cannot wait for you to hear it. Today's guest, I think, is really going to be helpful for a lot of families, especially parents, because I think this is something we all struggle with, and that is online safety and how we manage our screen time. I am delighted to introduce you to Chris McKenna. He is the founder of Protect Young Eyes and the executive director of the Protect Young Eyes Foundation. Chris is a respected author, and he creates valuable resources for families and schools. He is also an advisor to legislators and global tech companies like Apple and Snapchat. And he was recently chosen to speak at the 2024 World Economic Forum. Under Chris's guidance, the Protect Young Eyes team conducts presentations worldwide and gained recognition by being featured in the acclaimed Childhood 2.0 movie. In his personal life, Chris and his wife, Andrea, are on the verge of 25 years together, and he cherishes family road trips, connecting with nature, running, and savoring his sweet tooth. Chris is a devoted father and takes pride in his role as a parent to 4 children. And I think that's what makes him so very good at his job. I'm excited for you to hear this episode, and I hope that lots of families will pay attention, especially as we're entering to the summer months. We need more guidance when it comes to screen time. So here is my conversation with Chris McKenna. Well, Chris McKenna, I am so excited to have you on the Collide Kids podcast today.
Hey, Christen. Yeah, let's do this. Here, we got technology, even though we don't live anywhere near each other. We have technology getting us connected, and wherever you happen to be listening, you're connected to us too. This is awesome.
I know. That's what's really cool about the internet, right? Is that we can make friends from all over. So I think that's so fun that we get to talk.
Right. It's great. And we have to be careful, right? We'll get into that. So.
Right. We will get into that. I know. That can be wrought with danger, but it's also a good thing when you can connect with people who are like-minded and passionate about families and kids. So that's why you're here today. Would you just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. So I'm the founder of Protect Young Eyes, an organization that I never expected to be creating or running. It just came out of an observed need that I had, Christen, when I was in full-time ministry. So I left the business world. I'd spent over a decade business consulting all over the world, but then the Lord called me into full-time ministry. And so I went to the local church and I worked in student ministry for 7 years, also did some church finance. But it was during that time where I watched us put the internet in everybody's pocket, including teenagers. And that terrified me. That just didn't feel like, it didn't feel like putting 100 million people with 100 million choices inside the pockets of amazing, curious, but sometimes impulsive young people was a great idea. It wasn't a good idea for 40-year-olds either, as we came to find out.
True.
And so I started Protect Young Eyes as a small Facebook group that then led to a website, and now a team of presenters that does hundreds of presentations every year all over the world and provides help to amazing families like the ones listening, whether you're a parent, grandparent, whatever caregiving role you have. We want to show you how. There's a lot of places that talk about the problems, and we'll cover a few of them, but I'm pretty sure I don't have to convince many people in your audience that technology can have problems.
Right.
Instead, I want to talk about some real practical solutions. So we say step by step, chat by chat. We'll show you how. I'm not a tech person. I don't have a tech degree. I'm a CPA. I'm supposed to be a partner at Ernst & Young right now, but here I am in digital safety, stumbling and bumbling through it as a dad to 4 amazing children, right? Figuring it out. And I just believe, Christen, that a lot of practical things, both relational and technical things, there's buckets of things that we can do very practically to wrap our children in layers of protection, whether they're 4 or 14, whether it's summertime or winter, whether they're at home or at school, whether with friends or grandma and grandpa's house. There's just some real practical things that our analog brains need to remember to do in a digital world. A lot of us grew up analog, and we just have to think a little differently. So that's what we do. Our website, protectyoungeyes.com, has a ton of free, valuable information. Even though I don't love social media for all of us all the time, we do a lot on social media, primarily through Instagram and Facebook. You can find us there at Protect Young Eyes, and we're always sharing a lot of great information. Like today, we'll be sharing, I know today means a lot of different things on a podcast, but you'll see that we did a whole profile of all the different kid phones that are out there, right? Gab or TrueMe or Bark or Pinwheel, the different phone, right? So we do all the testing. My kids test all the stuff, and then I write it all up and share what we know. I have different devices kind of laying all over, where I'm talking to you from right now. And so that's just an example of the kinds of things that we like to provide for parents.
That's awesome. I think that's so needed. And like you said, digital protection is something that I think a lot of people know we need more of, but we need those practical tools. We need to learn how. So I'm excited to get into that today. But before we do that, because this is a show for kids, I always like to start out with a joke. So I'm going to make you tell me a joke. Do you have a good one to share with us today?
Yeah, Christen, what is the best time on a clock? What is the best time?
The best time? I don't know.
6:30, hands down.
Hands down. Yes.
Now, this is going to require everybody to go look at a clock that isn't digital.
Right.
But go look at it, 6:30, hands down. There you
Both
go.
hands are
That's all
down.
I got.
I like that joke. That's a good one. That's good. Well, let's get into your topic today, because I think this is something that I wanted to talk with you. We've been trying to set this up for a little bit, and I love that this is happening right as we're getting into the summer, because I feel like, especially in my family, the rules are a little looser. Everybody's sleeping in. Everybody's kind of enjoying their time. And so our summer rules might change a little bit, especially when it comes to screen time and what we're doing online. And so I'd love for you to share with us how, as parents, as families, we can really think about our screen time and our online safety. We'll be right back after this. Raising kids in the digital age isn't easy, but Bark Technology makes products that help parents keep their kids safe online and in real life. They have an app, a phone, and a home device that lets families set parental controls on their internet-connected devices. I love the app because it helps us manage screen time and blocks websites and apps we want our kids to avoid. It also sends alerts and gives us the ability to monitor texts and social media and even track your child's location. Visit bark.us to learn more about how you can keep your kids safe online. Use the code COLLIDEKIDS to get 15% off your subscription of the Bark app.
Yeah, summertime brings with it amazing good new things. And it also puts us in different situations. That means digital risk is also different in the summer. Now, my hope is that we are in digital spaces less often in the summertime.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that all of the people that we spend time with in the summer are of the same mindset. So we just recently updated, and we've done a variation of this every single year, Christen, a post that talks about summertime risk and how it goes up, 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 along with the temperatures. Unless you live in Australia, I always have to remember that I have a following in Australia and New Zealand that go, Chris, we're in the winter right now. I know I get that. But for most of the rest of us, the temperatures go up, up, up. And I think summer internet risk can also go up. And it's because of three things: new places, new people, and new patterns. And those three P's, places, people, and patterns, create different digital risk. And to me, it's always a matter of assessing risk. That was what I did when I was in the business world. I was a risk advisor. So I worked in large public, Fortune 500 companies. I would help them identify risk, business risk, process risk, financial risk. And then we would put systems and people and checks in place to mitigate and decrease those risks, or at least know when things took place so then we could get in front of it really quickly, right? Because you can't get rid of all problems.
Right.
And the same is true in parenting, right? We can mitigate risk, but at the end of the day, we still want our kids to go out and be a little independent and explore the world. As we say, fail small. We want to fail small with kids still around us so they can learn from that, so that they can grow up to be resilient and adjusted adults someday. If we bubble wrap our children, both in the digital world and the physical world, they're not going to learn how to deal, right? Because we know that the world will bring trouble. We've read this somewhere, haven't we? Right?
That's right. That's right. God told us that.
Right. We've read that, right? Jesus was pretty clear with his disciples to say, there's some crazy things that are going to happen, but take heart, stick with me. And the same is true, I think, in parenting. We can't bubble wrap our kids online and offline. But at the same time, I want to prevent egregious harm. So that's why we say fail small. But these three things, places, patterns, and people, are things that we need to be aware of in the summertime.
Yeah, I think that's so good. And I think as kids are listening right now, they're thinking, okay, I get it. I mean, there might be some dangerous things or some things I'm not supposed to look at in certain places. But can you talk just a little bit before we get into the three Ps? Because I love that they all start with letter P. Can we talk a little bit about risk and help kids understand what are the risks out there in the internet danger zones?
Yeah, so I want every human listening to this, whether you're 4, 12, or 40, to understand that almost everything that we use that's connected to the internet wasn't designed with human flourishing in mind. Why? Because the business model, and for kids listening to this, understand that everything you use connected to the internet wants to make money. That's just the reality of it. And when I talk to students, I'll share, did you know that in 2023, YouTube made $11 billion in advertising revenue from minors? Not just everybody, just minors. And so the question I sometimes ask, I'm like, did you get a check like in Christmas or the first of the year thanking you for the time that you spent on YouTube that they made money? No, I didn't either. You didn't either. So in other words, every young person listening to this, when you get online, whether it's on TikTok or on YouTube or on social media or even Google searches that have ads, you are essentially unpaid child labor. Now, it's a bit of an extreme way of thinking about it, but that's what their motivation is. Their motivation isn't your friendships, isn't your homework, isn't your grades, isn't the quality of your family time. They simply want your time and attention because it equals dollar signs. So at the bottom of all of that's exactly what I want us to remember, is they want to make money off of us. Now, that's not to say that I want you to go home and smash your iPad or smash your Chromebook or smash your PlayStation. Just remember, their objective is to make money off of you, and they will do whatever they can to do that. They will keep you on as long as possible, even if it's not good for your amazing brain. So those are just some digital realities that I want us to think about. And that means that they're not always careful about what it means to create DMs or vanishing content when it comes to Snapchat or vanishing content on Instagram or the ability to connect with others online. They just know that if they create those features, right? The reason there's a chat inside of all games, chat didn't exist in games when I was playing old school Atari games.
Right.
But now they know that if they create chat, if you're talking to somebody while you're playing Fortnite or you're talking to somebody and interacting with them in chat on Roblox, they know that you'll stay in the game longer because they know, just like God does, that relationships matter and relationships keep us connected to the thing that we're doing. And we get sort of this neurological and relational bond and sort of adhesion that forms through relationship. We were created in relationship, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and we're better, and we like relationships. And at the end of the day, game companies and social media knows these things. So I want everybody to understand a little bit more about themselves, about the motivations of these digital spaces, about the motivations of social media and YouTube, so that we can go, wait a minute, and just make better choices based on those realities. So that's me. I didn't answer the specific question of what are the risks.
Mm-hmm.
I could talk about predators. I could talk about, explicit content. I could talk about violent, extreme content. We know all those things are out there, but it's all out there because of these motivations, because they know that we want to look at it. And when we look at it, we spend more time on it. We spend more time on it. They make more money off of it. And I think when we understand some of those things, we can more at a 50,000 foot level go, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
regardless of the type of issue, I need to be very mindful of what I'm looking at, when I'm looking at it, and what it's doing to me as a human being. And I think when we can teach, when we all realize that, right? Again, whether you're in elementary school, middle school, or high school, or an adult, when we can step back and be a little more mindful about these realities, I think we just ultimately make better digital decisions.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I think that, like you said, that's good for anyone at any age to recognize all of these companies, all of everything online, they're all trying to keep you there. So even if they're not making money off you in that moment, they're trying to keep you to not get off. And so there's lots of things that we could talk about. And I've had previous guests on here that have talked about dangers, like predators and things like that. So I'll definitely put those in the show notes for people that are interested in going on that route. But I do want to talk about the 3 Ps that you mentioned. You talked about places, people, and patterns. These are things that change during the summertime. So tell us a little bit about that and how that applies to online safety.
Yeah, so especially if you happen to be from a state like Michigan that is more seasonal, maybe than where you're from, Christen, where you just go from hot to unbearably hot.
That's true.
You go from when everybody isn't sneezing to when everybody is because of allergies, right?
That's right.
But we have more seasonality here. And in the summertime, that means that we go to different places. So we maybe go to a lake, or we do sleepovers a little more often with friends or people that we only see in the summertime. So these different places can have different digital risk. What I mean by that is when we go to these places, maybe they don't have the same sort of protections in place.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe when you're at home, you have a router that is doing certain things with controls, or you have certain devices that are used. Well, when we go to different places, maybe we're using different devices in different ways, because maybe we now just have our smartphone with us, our iPhone with us, and that's the only thing we use to get online. And there's something about being on an iPhone in a new place. We use our technology differently in different places.
Mm-hmm.
And so we talk a lot about trying to avoid certain places. We have something we call the toxic trio at Protect Young Eyes, and that's bedrooms, boredom, and darkness. In other words, when we're in certain places at certain times, we use our technology differently. And so I want us to be careful about that. Or maybe we know that at grandma's house, the digital rules aren't quite as strict as when they are when we're at our own home.
Right.
Grandma doesn't have a router that has certain preventions or certain blocks on it because grandma doesn't even know where her router is. And I'm sorry, maybe you're a grandparent listening to this and you are tech savvy. I'm not trying to be condescending or anything, but just typically grandparents are the ones going, Chris, I haven't thought about that thing, and help. And so they're looking for guidance when it comes to those. And here's the deal, parents, you're often giving your kids devices to take with them to go to these new places because you want to stay in touch with them. But at the same time, you're not thinking about the fact that you're maybe the one that is increasing the risk for your child in those places because you haven't had the conversations with the people in charge of those places to know what they have in place. And that also goes for summer camps, right? As you're sending your kid off to summer camp, what do? You give them a phone so you can stay in touch with them. But what are the rules that exist in that camp? What do you know about what their controls are around how kids use devices? Are they letting kids use devices in the bunk at night? Again, knowing that nighttime always multiplies digital risk.
Mm-hmm.
Every single young person who I've ever counseled when it comes to inappropriate use of technology always has some sort of nighttime use that is a majority of the problem. because there's something about being online at night, again, that toxic trio of bedrooms, boredom, and darkness, that always multiplies digital problems. So these are just questions about places that I want all of us asking questions about. And for you, kids listening to this, just be aware that when you're in different places, you sometimes are tempted to use technology differently.
Yeah, that is so true. And I love that you talked about having those conversations. Can we talk about that a little bit? Like, as parents, how can we have those conversations with our kids? And then also with maybe those extended family members or other leaders that will be, like the camp leaders that will be with our kids. How can we have those conversations? What should we be asking?
Well, first I would say attack the awkward. just do it. Like, I don't know why we're so afraid to have necessary conversations. I joke sometimes, Christen, about the fact that if I was going somewhere, my mom always wanted to know, did they have Showtime, Cinemax, or HBO? Like that was the three-headed monster that was going to hurt me. And then MTV got added to the list, right?
Yes.
But she wasn't afraid to ask those questions. And I would say that the chance of something happening today is 10 times greater and 10 times worse. And yet we're 10 times less likely because we feel like we're being judgmental if we ask, do they have rules in their house, or do they have a router with controls, or do they take devices away at night? Why do we feel like that is a conversation that we shouldn't be entitled to have?
Right.
I think that we need to just, with love and curiosity, ask loving, curious questions about what kinds of digital controls are in place in the physical places where my child is spending time.
Yeah.
You're not going to try to impart your rules on them, but they should know what your expectations are. And you should know what theirs are too, so that you can tell your child to respect them, whatever those rules happen to be. Right. And so I think we need to attack the awkward, but love and with curiosity, so that we can make sure that all the young humans that are involved in using technology in these places are using it in a way that isn't doing anybody harm.
I think that's so good. Attack the awkward. That's good. So let's talk about the second P, which is people.
So people, we hang out sometimes with different friends in the summer. And so with that, on both sides of this equation, right? Both with parents and with kids, I think that means we need to do different things, because different kids can have different rules. Different families can have different expectations. So if you're right. And so again, using a Michigan illustration here, only because it's what I've known, I've lived my whole life here, is you go to cottages and you spend time with different friends. Sometimes when you're in those different places, different people. So it's still necessary to know, do I know enough about the internet rules in each home where my kid is spending time this summer? It gets back to the question you just asked me around the conversations that we need to have. How do I have those conversations? Well, I think, again, it's just practice, bake some cookies and banana bread and walk over with a smile and ask them questions, right? If you're spending time. So we as a society, especially here in the United States, we just generally know less about the parents of the kids that are friends with our kids.
It's true.
That wasn't the case when you and I were growing up.
Yeah.
Moms usually knew all the other moms of the kids that you were hanging out with. And I just think that's more necessary today, that we need to know the parents of the kids that our kids are hanging out with, so we can have these conversations, establish a relationship with them. The reason it's often awkward having these conversations is because we don't have a relationship with them. If you have a relationship, it's a lot easier to have these things, and you understand, well, you are kind of a like mind, and you didn't need to be so worried about the conversations. So if there are going to be different people, different friends that are hanging around at your house, or that your kids are hanging out with at their house, then I just think it requires us to have conversations and giving our kids equipment to know what to do if they're at a home that has slightly different digital rules. Making sure, moms and dads, that you tell your kids, and kids you know, that no matter what you might experience, even if it's not your fault, that you can always tell your parents about it and they'll never freak out. Right? That they've told you they're not going to freak out. And moms and dads, you have promised you're not going to freak out because it wasn't their fault.
Right.
That kids who might be listening to this, if somebody at a house or a place that you go to wants to show you something on a tablet or a screen or a phone, they always go, whoa, wait. Before you show me, tell me, what is it that you're trying to show me? And make them tell you what it is that they're trying to show you. And sometimes that convinces them that they shouldn't, if it was something that they knew they shouldn't have shown you in the first place.
Yeah.
Because when you say it, you automatically You just see it differently when they're forced to say it. And so that's a tool for you, kids who might be listening, to go, wait, before you want to show me that, tell me, what is it you want to show me? And sometimes by doing that, they change their mind and they're not going to try to show you something that could hurt you, right? That might shock you or cause you to be traumatized by what it is, because that can happen so easily.
I love that. That's such a good idea and such a great, easy way to say, tell me what it is you're going to show me first. Yeah, my friend said, and I teach my kids this and I tell other people to tell your kids, there's no such thing as a good secret. So there's fun surprises. Those are for like birthday gifts and surprise parties and things like that. But there's no such thing as a good secret. So when someone tells you, hey, I'm going to show you this, or I'm going to tell you something, but don't tell anybody else or don't tell your parents, then that's when you immediately tell an adult, a trusting adult, or your parents, and you let them know. So I think those are great things that we can teach our kids, that they can speak up for themselves and they can make sure that they're protected and give them the language to share with their friends what they're supposed to be doing.
That's right. Only parties and presents are okay as secrets.
That's right.
Nothing else.
That's right. So let's talk a little bit about patterns. And that's interesting because we haven't really thought about our patterns in the summer. What do you mean by that?
Well, during the school year, weekday bedtimes are pretty regular and predictable, but in the summer, bedtimes are looser. Kids stay up, they enjoy sunshine later into the evening, right? Bonfires with friends. And so you have different patterns, right? One more swim, one more time, whatever it is. One more time around the block on a bike, which I hope, you're out riding all the time. But that means up later. And we focused on this just a minute ago. We are big fans of keeping kids offline at night. Whether you're 4, 14, or 40, almost nothing good happens after about 9 p.m. on the internet. You're typically wasting time or wasting your life in some way.
Yes.
And that's when we make the worst digital decisions. Both kids and adults almost always make worse digital decisions at night. And so if you're up later during the summer, which is typically true, then I just want us to be aware of that. That's a new pattern that you're like not used to being up this late. And so you just tend to make riskier decisions at night. There's something about darkness that shouldn't surprise us, right? The difference between light and dark. Darkness rules digital spaces at night because you can almost rationalize anything, any decision at night. And so that pattern of being up later, again, it fuels that toxic trio of bedrooms, boredom, and darkness, almost increases digital risk across the board for everybody. And so as parents, getting back to some of the technical things we can do, that means you have the internet shut off. Now, I know not all devices depend on Wi-Fi. Quite a few of the devices that young kids use do. So that's why parents is important to control the internet at night. But that means that after a certain time, certain apps are shut off at night, which you can do on iPhones through screen time controls, through downtime. You can have certain apps shut off at certain times. There are certain parental controls that can do that on Android devices, right? To make sure that talk text is still available, maybe maps so they can get home, that kind of thing. But they don't need Snapchat after 10 p.m. They don't need TikTok or YouTube after 11 p.m., whatever time it happens to be. I'm just telling you that whether you're 4, 14, or 40, when you consistently spend time online at night, alone, or even with friends, you eventually make a choice that you regret. I've just found that to be a true thing across the board. So that's what I mean by different patterns.
Yeah. And I think that's such good advice, just to go ahead and have it shut off, just having the important things like ways to communicate and things like that. But everything else can be shut down. And I would just like to reiterate, because I feel like we've talked about this a few times on the podcast in different episodes, but parents, it's okay for you to tell your kids no. I don't know why that's so tough for some parents. They feel like, oh, well, I'm on my phone, so I should let my kid, but it's okay for you to be the parent, for you to put those boundaries in place, because that's our job as parents, is to protect our kids and help them. So I think that's important just to say again, it's okay for you to tell your kids no. It's okay to set up rules and boundaries, and you're doing it out of love.
Yeah, I think that points to a psychological issue that is different today. This is one of the first issues, Christen, that has woven its way as much into the life of adults and parents as it has children. That didn't always used to be the case, right? Whether it was rock and roll or whatever it was. Usually it was something that kids did that parents didn't. So it was easy to say no to something that you as a parent thought was stupid.
Right. That's right.
You didn't get it. You're like, well, of course, no. But that's different with technology. because we love it as much as they do. And so we feel hypocritical or mean if we say no. And I'm telling you, parents, your children are not small adults.
That's right.
The other thing that I would say to you is you are more responsible for your child's future wellness than their current happiness.
That's good.
They'll be fine. You are responsible for their wellness. And I'm telling you that their wellness depends on your stances with technology, that there is no such thing as a child who gets technology too late. There is no such thing as too little screen time. There is no such thing as a child who gets into a worse college or gets a worse job because they don't have certain technologies.
That's right.
Everything in you that is causing you to believe that is fueled by a billion-dollar marketing machine run by trillion-dollar companies. The largest businesses that have ever existed in the history of mankind are trying to convince you of lies. And so follow your heart. Christen, if there's one thing I found to be true is you never doubt a mama's gut. And most of the mamas that are going to be listening to this, your gut is telling you what we say all the time, which is delay is the way. And I'm telling you to listen to that gut.
Right.
Listen.
Yes, I think that's so true. And I think it's also okay to backtrack. So if you've already given lots of permissions and given a lot of screen time away already this summer or even during the year, it's okay for you to say, you know what? I think for the rest of this time, we're going to pull back a little bit and make good choices about our screen time and about how much we're, online and how late we're online. And I think you could do that as a family. I think one of the hard things is when you feel like, okay, I'm on my phone all the time, so I can't tell my kids that. Well, maybe that's a conviction that God's put on your heart that you need to back off a little bit and spend less time on it as well. So we can put those parameters in place for our kids and also for ourselves.
Yeah, parenting and marriage are both wonderful mirrors as to what we need to do first. So all the things that are telling you as a parent that you can't cut back are probably first questions you have to ask about yourself.
Right.
Why do you feel that way? Why do you hesitate to do that? And once you've figured those things out, I think you'll be in a better position to do exactly what you're saying.
Absolutely. And it's hard. It is hard, but we can do this together. That's why parents got to link arms with other parents that are like-minded, like you were saying before. And we've got to say, okay, we're going to do better about this together. And I think that's such an easier way to do things. So, Chris, this has been so good. And I'm so thankful for the ministry that Protect Young Eyes is doing. The things that your organization has put out is so good. And like you mentioned before at the beginning, you have lots of freebies and lots of things that people can find on your website. Will you talk about those resources a little bit more?
Sure. So we have device guides, how to set things up step by step. We have app reviews, and depending on when you might listen to this, we will have an on-demand course that parents can go through our 5 core values around creating a tech-safe home, right? A home that is tech-ready. Tame the technology in 30 days. This is something we guarantee if you go through this course. We have a private community now where we provide one-on-one tech support for families that have questions about things. We call that the table. We want parents to come to the table to have these hard conversations. And so these are all, again, places where parents, I think, can find a like-minded community, a private community that isn't called Instagram, that isn't controlled by algorithms and advertisements, where we can be safe and ask these kinds of questions. So come visit us at protectyoungeyes.com. Come visit us at social media, and we'll point you to other places, and we would love to help.
That's great. I love that. And I love that you offer that for families and for parents that need that motivation and that resource. So thank you so much for doing that. Well, before I let you go, I always ask my guests to tell me a memory from when they were a kid. So do you have a memory you want to share with us today?
Yeah, Christen, almost all of the best childhood memories I have involve one of two things, either vacations or grandparents. So I encourage families to pour into both of those places if possible, and wherever they can overlap. So some of my very best memories are at Sleeping Bear Sand Dunes, which is a massive national park here in Michigan, where we would race. My brothers and I would race up the sand dunes, these massive. And some of you are going, oh, it's just the beach. No. Talking like, half mile up kind of sand dunes where you are scaling them and running down as fast as you can and then face planting in the sand and having a good time. So I would go spend every weekend up at Sleeping Bear if I could. And if you're not from Michigan, It's a must visit place that you have to come and see. There's a dune called Pierce Stocking that there's a warning at the top which says you must be fit enough to come back up or we're not going to come get you. It is such a steep, right? And you have to find another way up, like go down the beach and come another way up that's less steep because it's so big. So yeah, I love it there. Just love that. In fact, it's funny you ask this question. I ran youth ministry for a number of years after I left business, and we would take groups of kids up to Sleeping Bear as a part of some summer trips. And the bet was if any kid could beat me to the top of Sleeping Bear, I would pay them $20. And I've always been in pretty good shape. I still run. And in almost a decade of ministry, no kid, no middle schooler ever beat me to the top of the dunes, even though I was in my 30s and 40s.
That's awesome.
So that childhood training in me, it conditioned me to run up sand dunes quickly. And so that was a bet I never lost.
That's awesome. And that's probably gave you some good street cred with those kids. I feel
that's
like
right. They were always like, we'll beat the old youth pastor. We got this. And then I'd be at the top. There's a tree up at the top. I'd stand there and be like, all right, come on. Gotcha. Come on. Slow pokes.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, for being on the show today. This was great.
Thank you for your time, Christen. God bless.
Wow, that was so good. And I learned so much. And I think there's so many times where we hear things like this as parents or as just family members and think, you know what, I need to take care of some stuff. So it's always good to be reminded that we need to be keeping ourselves in check as far as how much we're online. I love the perspective he gave us. And it's really good for us to think about that most of the places you go online and the apps you use, they are trying to make money off of you. So it helps you to keep a good perspective about what you and your family are consuming online. I love his advice when it comes to having those necessary conversations and they feel a little bit awkward. He said, attack the awkward. Just do it. Have those conversations that you need to do what you need to do to keep your family safe. Chris said, when it comes to online safety, we need to be aware of three things: bedrooms, boredom, and darkness. So when we're keeping those things in check, we want to make sure that our online time and our online devices are avoiding bedrooms, boredom, and darkness. Such good advice. He also gave a great strategy for kids to ask someone, wait, before you show me what you're about to show me, tell me what it is I'm going to see. He says making that friend tell you what it is might convince them not to show you, especially if it's something inappropriate, because saying it out loud helps them realize it might not be a good thing or it might cause harm. During our conversation, we also referenced 2 other episodes. If you want to continue in this conversation about digital safety, I would definitely recommend you listen to episode 98 with my friend Yami Pence, and go check out episode 152 with my friends Paul and Adam from Plugged In. Those are great resources. If this is something that you're concerned about or something you want to keep thinking about, these would be great places for you to start. I also would recommend that you go check out protectyoungeyes.com. They have incredible resources for you and your family and lots of strategies and things that you can use to help keep your family safe online. Well, now it's time for the kids only segment. This is the part of the show where you get to be on the podcast. So here is my friend, John.
Hi, my name is John, and this is my joke. Why did the Scarecrow win an award? Because he was outstanding in his field.
He was outstanding in his field. I get it. That's a good one. I love that. I love Scarecrow jokes. Good job, John. Thank you for sharing that. Well, hey, if you would like to be like John and share your favorite joke, or maybe you have a Bible verse or a quote or a song you want to sing, just head over to my website, collidekidspodcast.com, and click the tab at the top that says Kids Only, and you can record it right there. It is really easy to do on a laptop or on a phone. You can also send it to me through my social media. I'm on Facebook at the Collide Kids Podcast or on Instagram at Collide Kids Pod. Also, if you head over to my website, there'll be a little pop-up that asks you to join my monthly newsletter. And it is monthly. I only send it out once a month, but I've got great resources and lots of good things like the one that just came out this month. I've got some really fun ideas for the summer. I think you should definitely check it out. And there are other ways you can stay connected to the podcast, like through social media. Also, you can follow and subscribe to this podcast and leave a rating and a review. Those are really helpful for the podcast, and it's always good to read what you guys think about this show. You can also share this episode with friends and family and let them know what you learned today or what you liked about the show. You can also go to my website and click the link that says support and contribute just a little bit financial support to help keep the show running. I always appreciate that. And anytime you think about it, I would love your prayer support as well. Well, I hope you guys are having an amazing summer so far, and I hope you're finding lots of activities that keep you away from all those screens. Go play outside, go swimming, go do something fun with a friend. And in case no one has told you today, I would love to be the first to remind you that God loves you so much. Thanks for listening.
You don't have to go very far looking for bad news because somehow it just finds you. So finding peace in the chaos can be really difficult, but it doesn't have to be because the River mobile app exists. The River is a Christian music radio station dedicated to playing music to help you get through life's toughest moments or life's happiest moments and everywhere in between, and all from artists who love Jesus and are real people just like you. Listening is easy. You can download it wherever you get apps from. Just search 1049 The River or listen online at riverradio.com. And know that The River is proud to partner with the Collide Kids podcast.